Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Shomojit Patro. I am an associate professor of sociology. I teach in Sidhu Kanu Birsa University of West Bengal. Now I will discuss movements of political autonomy and statehood. Social movements are one of the principal social forms through which people give voices to their grievances and concerns about their rights, about their welfare, about their well-being. And as a consequence, as a result, they start various types of collective actions. Social movement is a product of social structure and has consequences for it. It wants to bring about a desired change. When people feel that there is a discrepancy between what do they want and what do they get, they start social movements to bring desired change. Autonomy movements are those movements where, drawing on the primordial identities, people of a particular region ask for separate and independent administrative arrangement for themselves. For example, they demand for separate state for themselves. It is often thought that smaller state may reflect the regional aspirations, regional demands more effectively, but in reality, the proliferation of new states brings no substantial change in the standard of living of its people. The line of demarcation between movements for state autonomy and secessionism is very thin. Both are social movements. Autonomy movements and secessionist movements, both are social movements. But autonomy movement remains within the constitutional framework and aspires to be to be culminated to autonomous statehood. On the other hand, the secessionist movement do not remain within the constitutionally stipulated. Please note the term do not remain within the constitutionally stipulated path of ventilating popular aspirations. They go beyond the constitutional mode of dealing with the things, and sometimes they become more violent. They can take any kind of form. So this is the difference between political autonomy, movement for political autonomy, and secessionist movement. Political autonomy, I repeat, political movement for political autonomy, they follow the constitutional ways and put pressure on the government to fulfill their demand. On the other hand, secessionist movements do not remain confined within the constitutionally stipulated paths. Now I will discuss some movements for political autonomy like Jharkhand movement, Uttarakhand movement, etc. I will start with Jharkhand movement. The new state of Jharkhand was formed taking the southern districts of Bihar. These districts were rich with minerals and large areas of forests. These areas are also known for its tribal population and very rich tribal heritage. It is not a mere coincidence that Jharkhand, the 28th state of the country, 28th state of our nation was formed on 15th November 2000. This was the birth anniversary of Birsa Munda, a very famous tribal leader. I repeat, Jharkhand state was formed on 15th November to mark the birth anniversary of Birsa Munda. As early as 1921, an association was formed with a view to do something for the downtrodden people living in Choto Nagpur area. This was the beginning of Jharkhand movement. It was formed in 1921. The name of this association was Choto Nagpur Unnati Samaj. Gradually, this organization set out its political agenda with the demand for a separate state. The Jharkhand movement started with this, with Choto Nagpur Unnati Samaj. Choto Nagpur Unnati Samaj appeared in new avatar and took the name Adivasi Mahasabha under the leadership of Major Jaipal Singh, and it was in 1939. The demand for a separate state. The people believed that if they are granted a separate state, their fate will be better. Many problems will be solved. So they started demanding for a separate state. The demand for a separate state for the tribals slowly got crystallized, and United Jharkhand Party in the year 1948, United Jharkhand Party was formed. The Adivasi Mahasabha was merged with the United Jharkhand Party and it took the name Jharkhand Party. The Adivasi Mahasabha was merged with the United Jharkhand Party and the new organization was named as Jharkhand Party. In 1954, Jaipal Singh of Jharkhand Party drew the attention of the parliament to the extreme impoverished conditions of the tribal people living in Choto Nagpur and Santal Pargana. Immense poverty, immense illiteracy, unprecedented malnutrition, all these people, backwardness, all these people, all these issues were raised by the people of these organizations, and they gradually raised the issue of a separate Jharkhand state. That was in 1954. Like any other movement, Jharkhand movement also witnessed many ups and downs. In 1970, a group of people under the leadership of famous Shibu Soren left Jharkhand Party and formed another organization. The name of this organization was Jharkhand Mukti Morcha. Under the leadership, it formed under the leadership of Shibu Soren. This organization, although fought for the same demand, they also demanded a separate statehood for the tribals of Choto Nagpur and Santal Pargana. This organization also fought for the same demand, but infighting between Jharkhand Party and Jharkhand Mukti Morcha as a whole weakened the spirit of the movement. Just 10 years later, in 1980, again there was a split, and Jharkhand Mukti Morcha, within the bracket Soren fraction, was formed. Thus, In 1980, Jharkhand Mukti Morcha Soren group was formed. It is very interesting that all these organizations aggressively moved to fulfill their demand of a separate state for the downtrodden tribal people. And they all thought that a separate state will only be able to solve the problems of the tribal people and could bring prosperity in these areas. And the story ended with success. The new state of Jharkhand was formed on 15th of November in the year 2000. Now I will tell you the story of the formation of Uttarakhand. The state of Uttarakhand, previously it was named as Uttaranchal, now it is Uttarakhand. So the state of Uttarakhand was formed carving out the hilly regions of Uttar Pradesh on 9th November 2000. After a long movement, prolonged movement, organized by the common tribal people of these areas, Uttarakhand is comprised of two divisions. One is Garhwal, another one is Kumaon. Uttarakhand movement is a kind of non-secessionist movement. It was not a secessionist movement because this movement to a large extent was organized following the constitutional means to push forward the demands of a separate state. We cannot say the same thing. We cannot say the same thing in case of Jharkhand movement. Lack of development, rising unemployment gave impetus to the age-old demand for the separate state of the people who are living in the regions now we call Uttarakhand. There was another reason as well. The people of this part of Uttar Pradesh had to travel long distances to go to the state capital and felt marginalized in all respects. They started thinking that the new state would be their own, and the government of the new state, new smaller state, their own government would be able to deliver for the development of this deprived. The government would be able to render better services. That it would be their own government. The people of hilly and forest-covered region will be served better by the new government. So they demanded a new state for themselves. In 1930, the people of these hilly regions adopted a resolution in favor of a separate statehood, and they placed the demand for separate statehood. The demand took shape and agitation in 1957 after the independence. The demand took shape of an agitation in 1957. Demonstrations after demonstrations were held under the leadership of Manavendra Shah. He was the first leader of this movement. However, it was nearly 15 years later that the agitation became a common cause of the people. Thousands of people they joined hands in this to fulfill these demands, and it was done after the formation of Uttarakhand Rajya Parishad in 1973. The Parishad became a platform for statehood struggle. Thousands of people joined their hands. Thousands of people started protest against the deprivations, against the exploitations, against the backwardness of the people of this region, and they pushed forward the demand for a separate statehood. Uttarakhand Kranti Dal took the center stage in pushing forward the demand of the separate statehood. Uttarakhand Kranti Dal, they took the leadership in crystallizing the grievances of the demand of the people and in providing the leadership of what we can call Uttarakhand movement. Uttarakhand Kranti Dal was established in July 1979. Gradually, the movement took political turns for obvious reasons. In fact, Uttarakhand Kranti Dal was a political party. BJP, Bharatiya Janata Party, in course of time supported the demand of the people for separate statehood and joined the movement. And the movement was strengthened in this. Uttarakhand movement took a decisive turn in 1994. In this year, the students started demonstrations throughout the state in support of the cause for a separate state. Uttarakhand Kranti Dal started first unto death, and the government employees called for a strike, a strike throughout the region. This strike continued for 3 consecutive months. Please imagine, this strike continued for 3 consecutive months, literally paralyzing the whole state administration. In September 1994, Uttar Pradesh police opened fire on the peaceful demonstrations in Khatima region. Several innocent protesters were killed in this incident, and the Uttarakhand movement reached its peak as a consequence. The heat of this movement for the first time reached at the national capital. The Delhi rulers felt the heat of this movement as a result. The movement continued, and in 1998, the central government was forced to pass Uttaranchal bill. It was sent to the Uttar Pradesh government with several amendments. This bill was returned back to the central government, and ultimately and finally on 9th November 2000, the central government declared formation of Uttaranchal as the new state. Please remember that in the same year, Jharkhand state was formed. This was 2000. However, in 2006, the name Uttaranchal was changed and the state was renamed as Uttarakhand. Previously, it was called as Uttaranchal. From 2006 onwards, it was called as Uttarakhand. The age-old movement thus finally came to an end, and the people of these regions who thought themselves deprived, who thought themselves marginalized, ultimately got their own state to manage their own affairs in their own hands. Now I will talk about the Chhattisgarh movement, the story behind the formation of the state Chhattisgarh. Chhattisgarh was formed taking 16 districts of Madhya Pradesh on the same 1st November 2000. People of these areas demanded a separate state as early as 1920s. Despite some sporadic demonstrations, sporadic rallies, occasional seminars, the movement could not take a very concrete, a very crystallized form until 1990s. During this period, Chhattisgarh Rajya Nirman Manch, an organization, this was called Chhattisgarh Rajya Nirman Manch, took the leadership of Chhattisgarh movement. Chhattisgarh Rajya Nirman Manch was formed, and this organization took the leadership of Chhattisgarh movement. irrespective of people, irrespective of caste, irrespective of communities, irrespective of religions, started showing their solidarity towards the demand for a separate state. Political parties also, political parties like Congress, political parties like BJP also supported the demand of the common people of the state. Ultimately, Madhya Pradesh Reorganization Act 2000 was passed and this new state of Chhattisgarh came into existence. A feeling of deprivation, a feeling of inequality sometimes binds people of a particular region together to move collectively against it. I repeat, the causes behind the movement for political autonomy, in case of whether it is Jharkhand movement, in case of Chhattisgarh movement, or in case of Uttarakhand movement, a strong feeling, it acts as a binding force, a strong feeling of deprivation, a strong feeling of marginalization, a strong feeling of being marginalized and inequality sometimes binds people of a particular region to move collectively against it. A corollary of such feeling, a byproduct of such feeling is demand for self-governance and political autonomy. That means a separate statehood for the people who feel that we are deprived. They feel that if we are granted, we are allowed to rule our own affairs, things will be better. And many problems of backwardness, problems of unemployment, problems of education, health problems will be solved, and the new state will be our own. They will not be marginalized in their own world. From this feeling, Jharkhand movement, Uttarakhand movement, or Chhattisgarh movement started. We have a different type of movement in our country, which is called Naga movement. The Naga people do not want a separate state. They want a separate country for themselves. They do not think that they are part of our country. They do not think they are part of our country, our nation. They believe, the Nagas believe that they live in they should have their own country. It is not India. They want to be lived in Nagalim, and they start violent movement. They have started rather violent movement to separate themselves away from our own constitution, to separate themselves away from our own nationhood. They believe they live in Nagalim. So these kind of movements are the features of our contemporary India. And you should also remember that behind this kind of demand for political autonomy is there again a kind of feeling of deprivation, a kind of feeling of marginalization, a kind of feeling of indifference on the part of the central government. People believe that it is not possible for the rulers living in Delhi, staying in Delhi, to rule the people who are living in remote places of, say, Chhattisgarh, remote places of Jharkhand, or remote places of, say, for example, Uttarakhand. So things would be better, or rather they will get better services from the government from the point of the view of the governance. They think that things will be better in this manner, and if they are granted, if they are allowed to live their own state in their own world, things will be better. If you want to know more, please visit EPG Pathshala website. Thank you.